Hello, my friends. It's Nick. It's the ASMR nerd. And we are so back. We are so back. It has been a hot minute since I had any mechanical keyboard content on this channel. And it's been even longer since I had any relaxing reviews on this channel. But today marks the return of both, and I'm very excited for it. Today we're going to be taking a look at a keyboard from a company called 8BitDo. 8BitDo. And you might have heard of these guys before. They are renowned for their excellent controllers. They make controllers, third-party controllers for all kinds of systems. They are especially well known for their retro-oriented controllers, for their quality, for their features, and for their design. What they are somewhat less known for, however, is their mechanical keyboards. And that is why I am so interested in checking out the 8BitDo Retro M edition here today. Their retro series of mechanical keyboards features an 80% or 10 keyless design and some thoughtful features including wireless and hotkeys and hot swappable sockets and all kinds of stuff like that in some decidedly throwback aesthetic styles. And the one we're looking at today speaks directly to my heart because it is modeled after the legendary IBM Model M mechanical keyboard, which graced so many desktops back in the 80s and the early part of the 90s. This is my Model M right here, and you can see it's a heckin' unit. These things are huge, and their size and robustness is matched only by their unwieldiness and their clickiness. These things are the antithesis of inobtrusive keyboards. And as beautiful and as solid and as stylish as they may be, in my opinion, they do lack certain features that a modern user might want. So what's a keyboard enthusiast to do if you want the style and the aesthetics of an IBM Model M, but the features and comforts of a modern mechanical keyboard? Enter 8BitDo's Retro M Edition. This is the board we're going to be taking a look at here today. I'm going to be taking it through its paces. We'll start off with an unboxing as usual. We will move on to the typing test, and then we'll come around and I'll share my thoughts and opinions on it with you. I've been using this for a couple of weeks now, and I do have some thoughts and opinions on it. So I'm very much looking forward to taking you through this look at the 8BitDo Retro M mechanical keyboard. Like I said, however, this is just the beginning of the return for relaxing reviews. There will be more to come. The next item on relaxing reviews isn't a keyboard, I will tell you that much. But I'm not going to say any more than that, actually. What I will say is that if you keep your eyes open, you might see a hint, maybe a little tease for it in the background of this video somewhere. So keep your eyes open. Let me know down in the comments if you happen to spot what the next relaxing review after this one might be. Hey, do you guys notice it's getting a little chilly in here? It's kind of cold right now. Fall is here, and the nights are getting mighty chilly, which is why it's really kind of this video's sponsor, Into the AM, to have sent this gorgeous, sophisticated, comfortable, and layerable Sierra shirt jacket for me to wear here today. You see, Into the AM has so many awesome options for layering so that you can wear your classic graphic tees, your favorites from Into the AM, but also layer them up with medium weight or heavier weight items for those chilly nights through the fall. Tomorrow, maybe it's bright and sunny out. You can take off your layers, have your graphic tees. Maybe the next night it's extra chilly. Well, Into the AM has you covered with their ultra comfortable, soft, and stylish graphic hoodies. Your favorite designs from your favorite Into the AM graphic tees now in hoodie format. The nice thing about all of these is that you don't have to sacrifice style for comfort. Into the AM stuff all looks fantastic. It fits amazing. The nice thing about this shirt jacket is that it can kind of be either, and it looks fantastic either way. Like I said, open, looks nice. You can show off your graphic tee. You want to button it up, button it down. You've got yourself a nicely fitted, slightly stretchy jacket, really flattering cut, and it will keep you warm on those chilly nights. So this fall, layer it up with Into the AM, from their tanks to their tees to their lightweight jackets to their hoodies. Everything has you covered. Comfortable, stylish, and easy to care for. All of these are just throw them in the wash, throw them in the dryer, keep going. Super straightforward. So make sure you head on over to Into the AM's website and check out what they have in their fall collection so that you can layer it up. And if you use the link down below at the top of the video description, you will save 10% of your entire order. That's your entire order, everything. And that stacks with any other sales that Into the AM has going on. They often have a sale going on, so go check them out. Get yourself a deal, save an additional 10%. Stay comfortable, stay stylish, layer it up, mix and match this fall. Big thanks to this video's sponsor, Into the AM. Now, I must admit, I did lie slightly earlier. It is not actually cold in here. In fact, if anything, it's a little on the warm side. So I am going to unbutton this very nice, very comfortable, legitimately super comfy Sierra shirt jacket for the duration of this video. But I think I'm going to keep wearing it, actually, because it does look really nice, doesn't it? Anyway, with all that said, it's time to dive in and take a look at 8BitDo's Retro M Edition mechanical keyboard. And here we have the 8BitDo Retro mechanical keyboard in box. And it's a pretty simple box. Just has a picture of the board on the front and some of the features listed here, or not even features, contents: keyboard, USB adapter, dual super buttons, which we'll see in a second, cable manual, and then the connectivity options down here. Other than that, it's pretty minimalistic. Just says 8BitDo over here. Nothing on either end, from what I can see. Okay, we've got a little bit more information on the bottom with another picture of the board. Those are those dual buttons that were mentioned on the front. Then we've got some features listed here: 87 key design, several different connectivity options, PBT keycaps, mechanical switches, hot swappable, and those programmable keys included. A little bit of electrical info, dimensions. That's kind of it. You can see here, this is the 8BitDo 8BitDo, I guess, Retro Mechanical Keyboard M Edition, and the dual super buttons M Edition. whatsoever. So, a simple, minimalistic kind of box. One might call it clean. I think it looks pretty clean myself. It's got a nice finish to it, kind of a soft touch finish. Let's see what's inside. The top lifts off, but it's very slow. Which is, I suppose, appropriate for an ASMR video, right? There it is. That makes a nice sound. Like a drum almost. Alright, I will put that aside. Alright, and here is the keyboard. We are greeted with it right off the bat, which is kind of nice. I guess all the accessories and documentation and whatnot are below, but you can see it's nicely nestled into this foam packing material, so it should be well protected. Oh, would you look at that? There's a flashing light on it. I guess it must, oh yeah, our mode switch is turned to probably Bluetooth mode. I guess it's been trying to connect this whole time. I don't know. The whole time it's been in the box. We'll find out. It's got a nice weight to it. Feels solid. Underneath, we have a quick start guide for mapping buttons, looks like. Some window shortcut keys. Oh, this is for mapping either the shortcut keys on the board or the big super buttons by the looks of it. And we can map them without software, it would seem, which is kind of cool. This is a little inspection certificate, I'm imagining. I can't read it, but it's probably guaranteeing quality or something like that. We have a handful of stickers, which I guess are meant to go on the big super buttons if you want. Control-C, Control-V, there's certainly practical uses for those buttons. Copy and paste. Control-S, SOS, emo. Sometimes you just need a emo button, I guess. Oops. Game over. 404 and enter. Oh, we've got 2 sheets of them. We've also got some symbols. Check mark, X, exclamation mark, left and right, radioactive, lock, some random pixels, and power. really not sure what the emo button's about. The emo sticker. That's pretty funny. We have the user guide, which looks like is in English, Chinese, Japanese, perhaps Korean, a bunch of languages, French, German, Italian, I think, maybe Spanish. I don't know. All the connection information, the fast key mapping, all that stuff. Good. A couple of different cables. This is, of course, the cable for the keyboard itself. Looks to be vinyl coated in gray, which is nice. It matches the keyboard. It actually matches somewhat the actual cable for the real Model M. Similar color, although the real Model M has a coiled cable. That would have been a nice touch from 8BitDo, but nonetheless, at least it's color coordinated. Of course, connectors are different than the original. We've got USB-A on one end and USB-C on the other, naturally. I guess this must be the 8BitDo logo. These little pixels. A sticker like that. I think it's about 2 meters or so, that cable. Then here we have a fixed cable that is attached permanently to our dual super buttons, which are super silly but kind of fun. So that same gray cable attached here. You've got some 8BitDo branding. The color scheme is beautifully beige and gray. And 2 massive buttons, A and B. The font treatment on these buttons is reminiscent of the old IBM logo. The period correct IBM logo for the original Model M, which I love. That's great. That's a nice touch. And then the big buttons themselves. Whoa, they're so clicky. Almost abrasively so. They are not very well stabilized. They're a little wobbly, a little rattly. But I'm sure they do the trick. On the back, we simply have this big piece of rubberized material so that they won't slip or skid. This actually is pretty heavy. It's got some weight to it. They made it solid. Just wish they made the buttons themselves a little more solid, because they feel a little hollow, a little rattly. But the unit they are attached to feels really good. 8BitDo dual super buttons. And on this end of the cable, it's just like a 3.5 millimeter, almost looks like a stereo audio jack, right? I think it is. Same type of connector. A fun pack-in. Maybe not the most practical thing in the world, but you certainly could use it for shortcuts or for macros. It does look fun. That appears to be everything in the box. So now let's get to the main event. Just move this out of the way. All right. The keyboard itself comes wrapped, as keyboards do, in this soft white plastic. Okay, so the keyboard is trying to pair, but I don't think think it was doing that the whole time it was in the box, because it looks like after a little bit of inactivity, it just goes to sleep. So and there it is in all its beautiful beige and gray glory. I love it. It's so good. I especially love this, the lock indicator section. It just reminds me of my very first keyboard. Okay, so it's actually trying to pair with the 2.4 gigahertz USB dongle. We can turn it off there though. We of course also have the Bluetooth option. So that's the wireless mode switch. We'll look at those other buttons in a second, but first let's talk about the overall layout. So we have this 80% design, which is otherwise known as a 10 keyless, because it's essentially a full-size keyboard, but it's lacking the numpad, what they call the 10 key over here. Worth noting that you can purchase separately a numpad that you can put over here that matches the aesthetic. So if you want to do that, it is an option. It could be quite practical for some. But a very standard 10 keyless layout here. We've got interesting looking keycaps. They are double shot PBT keycaps. They have a nice textured feel to them, lightly textured. But the profile is interesting. If we look from the side, you can see it's a sculpted profile, but it's also spherical. So it looks a little bit like an SA profile with those rounded edges, and that's sculpting. But it's not SA, it's actually shorter than SA. It looks a little bit like maybe a DSA or an XDA profile, but again, it's sculpted more like SA. I believe they call this profile MDA-like. MDA is a spherical, sculpted kind of profile that is SA-like, but lower than SA. And that appears to be what we have here, shorter than SA, but SA-like. And that is an appropriate kind of profile for a keyboard of this vintage. Of course, MDA did not exist in the 80s, but SA surely did, although the actual Model M has something closer to OEM for the profile on the keycaps. So, or something like that anyway. By my recollection, I'd have to actually check my Model M to be sure, but that is my recollection. So, but nevertheless, the spherical profile looks really nice and does give it a bit of retro chic, even if it's not completely accurate to the original design. This is more of a inspired by keyboard, of course. It's not aiming to be slavishly accurate to the original Model M, or else it would be quite different in terms of layout and whatnot. One little feature they do have here, well, not quite different. I mean, it'd be a bit different. It would have a numpad for starters. although there was a compact Model M that was closer to what we would consider a modern 75% as well, that IBM did make for a little while. Anyway, one thing I did notice is we have the stepped caps lock key, which you virtually never see in keyboards these days, but was very common in keyboards of the late 80s and early 90s, where it steps down here. That's a fun aesthetic nod. Aside from that, of course, we have this fairly large bezel all the way around with these little grooves running around the outside. That is a fairly true kind of design to the original Model M. Has molding similar to that. What we don't have at all on the original Model M, of course, is this cluster of keys and switches up here. As we already saw, we have the mode switch, a nice clicky switch, 3 positions. We've also got a volume knob. So this is just a rotary encoder. It's got a little bit of clickiness to it. A little bit of a little stops to it, which is nice. And then we have 3 shortcut keys. I reckon this one's for pairing in some way. And then perhaps these are rebindable. They have a nice click to them. We have the branding, 8BitDo retro keyboard. And as I was saying earlier, we have the little lock indicator lights over here, which have been slightly repurposed. Caps lock and scroll lock are true to the original Model M. The power is not. That would have been a num lock on the original, but of course, no numpad, so no need for num lock. So it becomes a power indicator light. Let's take a look at some of the other sides here, other angles. Okay, so this, I guess, interesting. So we have 4 different ports for plugging in our super buttons, or dual super buttons. And I reckon that's because that allows us to program. No, is that what it is? Actually, I have no idea why we have 4 different ports, now that I think about it. Maybe we can have a different preset bound to each port. So if we want to change the functionality, maybe we just move it over. ABXY. Oh, you know what? I bet it's because you can have up to 4 sets of these plugged in at once. I think that's what it is. I seem to recall having read that somewhere. Maybe on 8BitDo's website, pardon me. I bet you that's exactly what it is. So if you wanted to have 4 sets or 8 total super buttons, you could. They could all be plugged in, which would be crazy. Take up a huge chunk of your desk. Once again, we get that nice IBM-like font treatment on there. Very fun. We've got our USB-C type connector, which is centered on the top edge here. We've got a little spot for storing our USB dongle, or 2.4 gigahertz wireless adapter. It's got the 8BitDo branding on it, and it's got this fun kind of brick-like aesthetic. It's a little bit, makes me think of Mario bricks or something, you know? So that's fun. I love when keyboards have a slot to store that. It Just is nice to keep it with the keyboard rather than just having it floating out there and easy to lose. As you probably just heard, this is magnetic. It snaps into place quite strongly, so it won't fall out, which is great. Not much to see on either side. Aside from the profile here, you can see we also do have a inbuilt angle to the board. Looks to be maybe 4 degrees or 5 degrees or something. Not sharp, but enough that it's there. And that is a fixed angle because if we look at the back here, we will see there are no feet to flip out. So you've got a fixed typing angle. We do have, though, little rubber feet to prevent slippage. And here we have a label with that same brick motif. It says 8BitDo. Little information about the model. And nothing on the forward edge, the front edge. Very nice. So let's take a look at the keycaps and the switches. So this is a hot swappable design, so you can swap out the switches and the keycaps, of course, freely without having to do any soldering or anything. That's a pretty standard feature on keyboards these days. You don't really see soldered switches so much anymore, except on like really inexpensive boards. Nevertheless, it is a welcome feature, although interestingly, I see 8BitDo has not seen fit to furnish us with a switch puller or a keycap puller for that matter, which is a bit surprising. Those are very standard pack-ins, even on with very, very cheap boards. So I'm going to go and grab mine. All right, here we are. We've got switch puller, keycap puller. Can't imagine most people will be too upset about the lack of tools included, and maybe 8BitDo figures. Everyone has something like this by now. I don't know. But if it's your only mechanical keyboard, then you probably won't. I certainly have enough of them. But anyway, it is a slightly strange omission. Let's pull out this keycap right here. Oh, I guess we'll pull them both off. It's actually an interesting question. Can these be pulled off with your bare fingers? They can be. It's not super easy, but they can be. Can be done. All right, so let's see what we got here. So here we have one of the keycaps. Again, you can see that spherical profile, also that sculpted top. And you can see these are very thick. Look at that. That is a nice, thick keycap. There's no flex, no bend. That feels robust. It feels solid. Having thick keycaps is nice for a few reasons. Not only does it, feel sturdy and durable, but it also can affect the sound signature, give it a bit of a thockier signature. These are made of PBT plastic, which is often considered to be the preferred type of plastic for keyboard keycaps because it doesn't get shiny as quickly. The surface kind of resists finger oils better, so they retain that matte kind of look for longer. They will eventually shine up like any keycaps, but they do seem to do a better job of resisting that. And they feel nice. It's a nice plastic. And then, of course, the legends, the printing on here is achieved via a process called dye sublimation, which basically fuses the dye into the plastic, so it's not printed on the surface, but rather dyed right into the keycap, and therefore it will never fade. It will never rub off. It will be eternal, pretty much. These keycaps will probably be here 10,000 years from now. Probably actually. Some pieces of them anyway. So there are those. And that appears to be the case across the board. Nicely made, nice and thick dye sub keycaps. Why did I put that back on though? Because we're about to pull off a switch now. So the switches, as you've probably noticed, are very clicky. These are Kailh Box White switches. I think they might be Kailh Box White V2 switches, actually. Come on. There we go. Gosh. Actually, I think I mashed that. Managed to damage the switch housing slightly, trying to pull it out of there. It's a very tight fit. So bear that in mind, I guess. Yeah, I damaged a little bit of the upper housing there. Not that it matters. The switch is still functionally identical. But the Kailh Box White switches, I think these might be the Box White V2s, are a fantastic clicky switch. They are one of my favorites. They are a relatively light switch, so they don't take too much to press down. But they, of course, have that tactility and that nice snap of a clicky switch. These are equivalent, approximately, to Cherry MX Blue style switches, but I prefer the mechanism in the Box White switches much more than the MX Blue styles. These use a click bar to create the tactility and the click rather than a slider coat kind of thing that the blues use. And it makes for a much more precise and satisfying snap and a lot less rattle. So, now of course, the original IBM Model M has buckling spring keyboards. Buckling spring keyboards, where there's literally like a spring underneath each key. And when you press down on it, it goes boonk, and it buckles like that. And then when it does that, it goes click, and it goes snap, and it hits the side of the well in which the spring is sitting. It's kind of hard to describe, but you can watch my video on it to see if you're curious. Anyway, that's how the sound is made on the old Model M's, and they are loud. They're very loud. But this has the potential to be quite loud as well. It's certainly a good modern analog for that style. Nobody uses buckling springs anymore. I think those died out in the mid-90s. But anyway, we've also got the box style stem and surround, which provides a degree of, I think, dust resistance on these switches. 5-pin switch, 2 contact pins, 3 stability pins, and again, these hot swap sockets. The board is aluminum underneath. I should say the plate on which the switches sit is of black or dark gray aluminum. And underneath that is, of course, the PCB with the hot swap socket. Notably absent here, notably absent, is an LED. There's no LED under this switch. This keyboard has no RGB, friends. No RGB, which is actually quite surprising for a mainstream-oriented, gamer-oriented keyboard in 2025. I think it's a bold choice. I don't think it's necessarily a bad choice. In fact, I think it's an appropriate choice considering the inspiration behind this board, because certainly the original Model M has no RGB. However, some might find that to be, a deal breaker if you really want to have the backlight. But of course, the keycaps are not shine through, right? So the backlight is of limited use without shine through caps. Not totally useless. I have seen many keyboards without shine through caps that still have RGB, but still. Anyway, that's an interesting observation. So let's put this switch back in place. See if we can get it in again after we struggled to get it out. There we go. Pops into place quite easily. And the switch, or the keycap rather, goes back on. So we've kind of heard a bit of what this sounds like, but let's just get a slightly better sense for it here. It's wonderfully clicky, isn't it? This is not the keyboard to get if you're worried about annoying your significant other or your cubicle neighbor or your coworkers or anything like that. This is an unapologetically loud keyboard. Of course, you could swap out the switches for some quiet linears. I'm sure it would sound nice, but then you're kind of missing that clack that really, sells it as a retro keyboard inspired by the Model M. So, although it would be nice if 8BitDo, pardon me, sold it with with another option. Like if they sold it with reds, let's say linears, if you wanted. But no, they're hardline about it. You're getting clicky as heck Kailh Box Whites, and you're going to like it. So the one thing remaining here is to check how the stabilized keys sound. I'm curious about that because it's always something that's challenging to get right from the factory. Have a nice stabilized key that doesn't rattle. And I'm not sure if 8BitDo is doing anything with their stabilizers, if they're lubricating them, padding them, anything. So let's find out. Let's see what we've got here. Let's start with the backspace. Pretty good, I would say. That's respectable. Good stability, good solidity. And the click I'm hearing is not from bad stabs. It's just the switch. So that's good. The enter. Also pretty good. Right shift. That's great. That's very stable. Very smooth. Left shift. Another good showing. Finally, the trickiest key of them all, one of the most crucial because it's the one you press all the time. Space bar. Actually pretty good. Not bad at all. Color me impressed. It's a little hard to tell because, again, the keys are so clicky. The switches, I should say. But from what I can hear, there's no stabilizer rattle. They feel very stable. So let's see what's going on under there. So we've got standard plate-mounted Cherry MX style stabilizers in black. I don't think they're looped at all. I think they're totally dry. I don't see any lubrication on there. I don't think. It's a little hard to tell, but I don't think so. So that considered, they sound great. I'm actually surprised they sound as good as they do without any kind of loop. So whatever stabs they're using, whatever OEM they are acquiring, sourcing them from, good job, 8BitDo, for picking some nice stabs. God, that's potentially very obnoxious, but it's very fun too. All right. Oh, finally, let's give it the old flex test. I like to do that just to see how robust the board feels. I will say it's got a decent weight to it, but it does have a bit of a sense of hollowness, especially on the backside. As far as I know, there's no padding going on in here. There's no foam layers. There's no gasket mount. So this is just a standard, top mount style design with no sound dampening going on. And of course it's all plastic. So if we take it and we give it a little flex, it does twist a little bit, I can feel. I wouldn't want to take this and reef on it super hard. It's not like it's gonna break on you just in everyday use, but it also isn't made of aluminum or anything, so it's plastic with the limitations that that entails, and it has a reassuring weight to it, but a little bit more hollowness than I would like. Personally, I really like to have some sound dampening in there, both for the feel, like the density, but also for the sound signature. Speaking of sound signature, that's what's up next. We're going to do some typing tests on here. Nothing to look at in terms of the RGB, of course. No RGB to be had. But the sound is going to be key. So let's give it a listen. And here we are, my friends, having unboxed the keyboard, having listened to it extensively, and now I have used this keyboard for the past couple of weeks and formed some opinions on it, which I will relate to you now. So, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first. This keyboard is loud. There's no way around it. This is a loud keyboard and proud of it. And it should be. It should be both loud and proud, I think, because that is true to the heritage, the lineage of this aesthetic design, the Model M. As you would have just heard, this keyboard has those clicky Kailh Box White V2 switches, and those things have such a satisfying snap. They have this snappiness to them that if you've only ever used a Cherry MX Blue style clicky switch, I think you will be really surprised, pleasantly surprised, with how crisp the Kailh Box White switches are. They really do have this crispness, this precision, this snappiness to them that those click slider based Cherry MX Blue clones don't have. And so for that reason, these are my favorite clicky switches available right now. And, you know, there's no getting around the fact that they make a lot of noise. And so right off the bat, I will say, if you're in a quiet work environment where your coworkers or your family or anyone like that might get annoyed by the sound of your keyboard, this keyboard might not be for you, okay? That being said, we do have some mitigating factors here. The main one being that these are hot swap sockets. These switches can all be pulled right out, no desoldering required. You can just pop in other ones. So if you wanted, you could fill this with quiet linear switches and have a nice, reasonably quiet keyboard, I think. However, I'm not entirely certain what that would sound like, because one thing about these clicky loud switches is that they don't have a lot of subtlety to them. With linear switches and even tactile switches to a certain extent, you get more of the sound of the actual keyboard coming through. When you bottom out those switches, you can hear the resonance of the board more easily. With these clicky switches, they kind of drown out everything else. There's really no subtlety to that sound. My point being that putting linears in here might have somewhat unexpected results from a sound perspective, especially because, as we noted during the unboxing, this is actually not that sophisticated a keyboard when it comes to its sound dampening solutions. That is to say, there is none. there's no foam, there's no silicone, there's no gasket mount. Literally, it's just a top mount style keyboard with an aluminum plate and an otherwise fairly hollow case. And so I do wonder if the acoustic properties of this keyboard would be as appealing without the clicky switches. Anyway, I think that most people buying this board are probably going to stick with the stock switches because they know what they're getting into. Unless you really, really want this aesthetic, but you must have quiet switches, in which case I say, good luck to you. But as it stands, with these stock white switches in here, the clicky whites, I think this thing sounds really good. It's surprisingly good for how relatively primitive the design and the build is. We also noticed that it didn't even look like there was any lubrication on the stabilizers, any padding under the stabs or anything like that. And yet, it sounds good. With very little rattle, very little chatter, very little clicking except for the intentional clicking of the switches. So I have to hand it to 8BitDo. They know how to manufacture something with tight tolerances and with quality components, even when they're not giving it all that maybe extra keyboard enthusiast kind of detailed attention. that we might have come to expect from some more keyboard-oriented companies. I will remind you, 8BitDo is primarily a controller company, right? But it seems that they've taken some of those lessons and applied it to this keyboard. The quality and fitment feels very good. On that note, the keycaps. Keycaps are another highlight, a standout on this board. These things not only are well made, they're very thick. They're made with this dye sublimation process so that they are never going to fade, never going to rub off. You know, the legends will be there in perpetuity, basically, as I said, well past my expiration date and yours too. But I really like this profile as well. It's this kind of interesting compromise between like a OEM style profile, right, where we've got the stepped and sculpted shape to the rows of keys, but also this spherical side profile that's reminiscent of an SA style keycap. You will note, interestingly, that the original Model M does not have that spherical side profile. These are cherry, I guess, profile keycaps. They sure look, or very close to that anyway. They could be OEM, but something like that with these straight sides. But many keyboards of the Model M's era and earlier, really mostly earlier, but overlapping with the early Model M's, did have this more spherical profile, like an SA style profile. And so I think aesthetically, this profile evokes the time period in a way that people will find very pleasing, I think. Beyond that, though, it's just comfy to type on. I like the stepping, I like the sculpting. The tops of the caps feel just the right size. And at my fingertips, they're slightly scooped. They kind of cradle the fingertips. I like this profile a lot, and I think that 8BitDo has done a nice job selecting that profile to pair with this particular keyboard. In terms of the hotkeys, in terms of the switches up here for the mode switch, for the rotary encoder for the volume, they work as intended. They're fine. I think they feel all right. I wouldn't say they're like the most satisfying, but they have pretty shallow action, but they get the job done. And the mode switch, I will say, does have a satisfying snap to it. So a nice tactility there. Overall, I think from a hardware perspective, this thing is really solid. I think it has the features that you want, that you've come to expect, like the hot swap sockets, the tri-mode wireless, which, by the way, does work great in both Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz mode. The 2.4 gigahertz connects so fast. Like, I switch it to that, and it's immediately connected, which is fantastic. Everything works as expected, and it looks fantastic. I think this thing looks killer. There are some notable omissions, as we discussed. Notably, no RGB. So if you want backlighting, well, this is not the keyboard for you. These keycaps obviously are not shine through, and there are no RGB LEDs on this board. Also, like I was saying earlier, no dampening going on. So if you don't like the stock sound signature, well, obviously this keyboard is not for you. Finally, I will say the software experience leaves something to be desired. 8BitDo software is, I'll say, maybe a little better than some of the software for other keyboards, especially a lot of those ones I've seen coming out of China over the years. Many of them have notoriously poor software suites to go with them. I will say 8BitDo's is maybe a cut above the worst I've seen, but it is certainly not among the best. It was not super intuitive. I had some issues with it initially. Ultimately, it's fine. It works, but I wasn't in love with it, that's for sure. And software is so often the weak point. in a lot of these keyboards. And of course, this keyboard can only be configured with 8BitDo's proprietary software. It doesn't use any open source alternatives like VIA or anything like that, or QMK. So you're kind of stuck with 8BitDo's somewhat janky software solution. But I did not have to use it very much. I just wanted to see what it was about. But the stock configuration is quite satisfying to me in terms of the keys that are represented here and how it all operates. So those are the pros and the cons of this keyboard as I see it. The biggest pro of them all, I will reiterate, is this beautiful retro aesthetic in this relatively modern frame with the kinds of features that you might expect out of a modern keyboard. And so if you're sold on the looks, if you're sold on the aesthetics, and it has the features you want, I highly recommend 8BitDo's Retro M Edition keyboard. It's also worth noting that 8BitDo has several other styles of the retro keyboard, including one styled after the American Nintendo Entertainment System, as well as the Japanese Famicom. And there's another one as well, I forget how it's styled, but the greatest hits of the late 80s are represented in their styling. So check out the link down below at the top of the video description, and you will find 8BitDo's retro keyboard offerings there. And that is the long and the short of it, friends. I do hope that you enjoyed seeing and hearing and learning about 8BitDo's retro mechanical keyboard in the M Edition flavor here today. Like I said, I've had it on my desk for a while now. I've been really enjoying it. It is an extremely satisfying, tactile, fun keyboard to touch, to interact with, and to use. And I hope you found it so in this video as well. Big thank you to 8BitDo for sending over this Retro M Edition for us to take a look at and listen to here today. And as I said at the beginning of the video, this is just the beginning of the return of relaxing reviews. You can expect to see more awesome gaming hardware and tech here on the channel moving forward. The next one I have lined up, it's another product from 8BitDo. And like I said, if you take a look around here, you might get a hint as to what it's going to be. So keep an eye out, and I hope you're looking forward to that. Once again, my friends, thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you found it interesting and informative, but above all, I hope you found it relaxing. And I look very forward to having you back here next time for another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Bye for now, friends. And look at that, we've reached the end of the video, but there's one more critically important thing I must do before we wrap it up. And that is, of course, to give special thanks to this channel's supporters. Those stalwart supporters who've been with us through thick and thin, who support what I do here on the channel, the content that I create, whether through my Patreon or my YouTube memberships. I appreciate all of them so very much. There's one particular tier, however, that gets a very special spoken shout out in every single video. And as you know, it is time for me to read our Fusro tier supporters out to you. Starting with Drummer Brit, Jake Luffney, Ragnar Ragnarsson, and Joe. Just Joe. Short and sweet. I appreciate these folks so very much, and in fact, all of the individuals you see here, their support means the world to me. One big thank you to all this channel's supporters.